was a very overly generous introduction. I can hardly wait to hear what I have to say. No, but seriously, I love to talk to audiences like this. And actually, I should say up front that once upon a time, many, many years ago, when this was called actually the Young Leaders group of the BMW Foundation. You can imagine many years ago, I was one of them, and for me that was a wonderful experience, as I know it is for you. So for me it's wonderful to be back here. I feel privileged to be able to speak to you today about competitive green and the road to net zero. So typically, at least sort of in the global north, when we think of net zero, we think of deep emission cuts, right? Doing less. We may also think about wind and solar. And of course, that's correct. But I'm also here to tell you that this is definitely not enough. So it's a piece of the puzzle, but we need much more. And if we can go to the first slide here, this comes from the International Energy Agency. So what they say is that if we ever want to reach net zero, we're going to have to really innovate like there's no tomorrow. Why? Why is that the case? Because according to the IEA, around 1/3 of the emission reductions that are needed will need to come from technologies that are not yet on the market. And I emphasize not yet on the market, because what I work on is a new generation of clean technologies. And I can tell you, we have a lot of the promising technologies in the lab, but we don't have them in the market. And that's where they make all the difference. I always say, you know, you only decarbonize by actually using these technologies. It's not enough for Europe and especially Germany to say, we have world-class research. Yes, we do, but that's not enough, right? So, and the reality check, of course, in the world is emissions are still going up. That's a fact. Secondly, I go to energy conferences, not just climate conferences, and I can tell you the fossil fuel business and industry is very confident. They're making brisk business right now. And what you see as part of the COP process is that climate still very much suffers from a collective action problem, right? Who wants to be the first one to really make the bold steps? So, to be very blunt, it's simply not possible to decarbonize the world without the technologies, with just the technologies that we currently have, because honestly, even if we deployed all the renewables in the world, it's not enough to decarbonize, particularly industry. If you think of steel, if you think of cement, shipping, aviation, all of these sectors, and they're highly emitting and energy-intensive sectors, we have no real solution for them yet. So this is a tall order that I work on every single day. So bottom line is the clean energy race is on. And as I said earlier, this is not just about developing these technologies, but it's to deploy them. Deploy is the key. And I think we spend in the public debate, broadly speaking, too much time only talking about the innovations in technology and not enough about the innovations in deployment. And let me say, as someone who operates in Europe, I am oftentimes just exasperated how difficult it is to deploy anything. That it takes years to get a permit to deploy anything. This morning I met the ambassador of South Africa to Germany, because I am actually extremely bullish on emerging markets to deploy some of these technologies, because I feel the hunger that they have for progress and that they get innovation much more than we do here. So, but competitiveness, I want to say a word about competitiveness. So, you know, there was recently, some of you, certainly the Europeans know, that Mario Draghi, who used to be the former prime minister of Italy, and of course also the former president of the European Central Bank, he wrote an important report about European competitiveness, or rather the lack thereof. So this was a very widely noted report, and I just want to show you yes, if we go to that slide with the energy prices. So according to the report, and this is very pertinent to industrial sectors, and note you are in Germany, which is sort of the industrial heartland of the EU. So currently, we pay for the EU electricity retail prices are 2 to 3 times higher than in the US and in China, 2 to 3 times. And gas retail and wholesale prices are currently between 3 to 5 times the prices as they are in the United States. You may say, why do I care? We should care because Europe is deindustrializing as we speak. And that's not just a problem for industry, but also for startups. So I looked up the figures for manufacturing. So according to Eurostat, the employment in manufacturing as a share of the total decreased from almost 25% in 1990 to less than 14%. So fewer people working in manufacturing. In Germany, it went down from 28% to 18% in the same time. Again, you may say, why should I care? You should care because Europe has a very unusual situation. We don't create sizable new companies. Europe is notorious for not being able to scale and to commercialize its technologies. And this is becoming a real problem. The last company that was founded in Europe that made it to be valued at 100 billion euros was founded more than 50 years ago. And it was SAP, founded in 1972. That's pathetic. We're the only place, I mean, if you compare it to the United States, also China, that is just unable to produce new companies. And this is why it is also so threatening that the existing industrial stock is currently essentially eroding because of these high prices of energy. So, and why should we care about this? And here I think the Draghi report was actually very good. Because energy is basically prosperity. I think we oftentimes, when we think about prosperity, we think about consumption. We think about buying new stuff. No, prosperity, and Draghi is right, prosperity is about the ability to sustain our welfare states, is the ability to invest in education, is the ability to invest in climate change. We still need to invest a lot in these technologies. So when you think energy, please think energy is prosperity. And prosperity not as in buying more stuff or doing more things, but it's really the prosperity we need to hold our societies together. So for me, Europe is now very much at a tipping point. I like to call it sort of the scale or fail moment for Europe. And some of you may know that we will have now a new policy program that's going to get underway called the Clean Industrial Deal. The way I would describe it, because you know we had the last 5 years the Green Deal, which I very much supported. When I was still at the European Commission, I worked on the early ideas for the Green Deal. And I went in it with all my heart. But I have to say now, 5 years into it, the Green Deal simply doesn't have a business case. And if something doesn't have a business case, and it doesn't work for industry, and it doesn't work for startups, it just doesn't work, right? So this is why it's so important that the Clean Industrial Deal that's getting underway now really have sort of that business case that's been missing to date, right? Because so far, what was sort of regulation, sticks, and really micromanagement of the economy needs to turn into something that unleashes innovation, unleashes technology, unleashes entrepreneurship. And this is where all of you here in the room are so key, and this is why I'm talking to you about it. So Europe's high cost of energy, to be fair, makes this transition both more urgent, but realistically also more difficult. However, you may have heard Bill Gates speak about what he likes to call the green premium. So it's a difference in price between a clean product or service and a polluting and fossil-intensive product and service. So that green premium, I think we actually need to rethink in Europe. Because if our electricity prices and the prices for natural gas are this high, that means that my emerging clean technologies should actually be much more competitive, right? I mean, so the green premium would be much lower in Europe for these emerging clean technologies. And this is the case that I am making to policymakers. And just yesterday, I spoke here at the Wired Energy Summit, where something that I said was really picked up by a lot of people. But I said, if we can build an LNG terminal in less than 12 months, which this country is very proud of, and they call it the new Deutschlandgeschwindigkeit, the new Germany speed, then surely we should be able to get some of these emerging clean technologies underway a little bit quicker as well. That's at least my opinion. And if we do that, let me tell you, this is not only good for climate, this is also good for resilience, this is good for security, this is good for competitiveness, and I dare say it is also good for democracy. So, but I want to talk just very briefly, because I know I'm out of time, some of the factors that must be in place for this. First, we need abundant and affordable renewable energy. Germany passed a law that has been transformational for this country that I think we need to have essentially to inspire all of Europe. It's called essentially the overriding public interest, because the rollout of renewables is now honestly a matter of national and European security. So this overriding public interest we need to study, we need to follow. Second, we need growth capital, much more growth capital, especially for what we call FOACs. These are first-of-a-kind projects, right? If you think about technology, it's building that first plant that is exceedingly expensive. That's when you really need to spend 50, 100 million euros. That's tough. And this is what we're missing in Europe. So growth capital, we definitely need to get underway, including what I like to call a new generation of public-private partnerships, precisely because these emerging clean technologies are risky. I want to be clear about it. We need to socialize the cost. It is not realistic to think that a VC fund or so will fund something that may only pay off in 20 or 30 years. We need to socialize the cost. We need to bring everyone together, including philanthropic capital. We need blended finance instruments that bring the public together with private funding, together with philanthropic capital. This is what we do at Breakthrough, and I think we need much more of it. The last point I want to make is we need a conducive and innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem. Just last week, I spoke in Brussels at an event, and it's always the usual. You know, they're wonderful entrepreneurs, and I was asked to say what is different in Europe compared to the United States and China. And I just put my official speaking notes aside, and I said what is genuinely different is they take their entrepreneurs seriously. When they see a young company, they can imagine that that company will become a globally leading company, a technology leader. I hope there are no policymakers in this room, but for our policymakers, a startup is like a photo op. Today I'm doing something cool. I'm going, you know, to an incubation lab or something. I am tired of this. Honestly, I cannot take this anymore. And there were some of the startups, they said, oh, we're invited tomorrow to Ursula von der Leyen. And I was like, tell her, this is the time. And she will be measured in 5 years where we are. And if we haven't made any progress, this will be nothing but an utter failure, because no society, no economy can make it if you don't take your entrepreneurs seriously. And we have a lot of catching up to do. I know I'm out of time, you're kicking me off the stage, but I want to conclude my remarks with hope. When I went to my first COP was COP27 in Egypt, and after 2 days, I was exasperated. You hear these stories about climate change, just terrible events, not enough investments. And I thought I need to speak about hope to this crowd. And to end this on a completely pretentious note, I will quote myself. And what I said then was, imagine how much less hope we would have today if we didn't have wind, solar, and batteries. And now imagine how much more hope we would have if we had long duration energy storage, sustainable fuels, green hydrogen. Thank you very much.